Hello everyone and welcome to this video on the Project Lifecycle. So there was a previous video introducing us to the concept of projects, so what projects exactly are, as well as a definition of project management, as well as looking at some of the key elements of projects and some of the key challenges inherent in managing projects. So what we're going to do now is build upon that foundation and take a look at the project life cycle. So look at the typical start to finish set of activities involved in project management, as well as dividing them up into 4 distinct stages. We are going to use a 4-stage model in this video. It's fairly comprehensive. It covers everything involved in a standard project, but you should be aware that there are other competing and different life cycle models. So many methodologies would have variations. The APM, the Association of Project Management, which is the largest chartered body for project management in the UK, has an extended lifecycle model. The PMI, the Project Management Institute, has its own model, so on and so on. But this is a fairly good base introduction model which covers everything most projects involve. So if we look at this 4-stage model, sometimes this is also called the 4Ds. So you have the define stage, the design stage, the deliver stage, and then the develop stage. Now, it's important to note that this is not a life cycle of the actual project itself. All of the work involved in the project will be in the deliver stage, the 3rd stage, also sometimes called the execution stage. So if you're building, say, a new construction, so a new facility, then the building work itself will actually only take place in the deliver stage, the execution stage. The define, design, and develop stages are all stages where project management activities will be taking place. We are actually defining the project, you're designing or planning the project, and then you're developing or reviewing the project. So these are all project management activities and not actually the project activities designed to directly achieve the objective of the project. So if we take, again, building a new construction, the define stage is where we talk to stakeholders, we actually develop a business case to justify the project, and we develop a project brief to give us clarity on what the project is trying to achieve. And then we would go ahead and start designing the building itself, designing the time resources needed. So our scheduling plan would have our risk management plan, our cost plan, all of the various planning documents we need for the project. And then in the 3rd stage, we actually build the building itself. And then we'd lastly would have a review of the project in the 4th stage. So these are the 4 stages of project management, not necessarily 4 stages of executing our project. That's just one distinct stage, the 3rd stage in these 4. So if we start by looking at the 1st stage, which is the define stage. So at the define stage, this is where we actually develop our understanding of the project requirements, and we develop a justification for running the project. So remember, a project is temporary and it's unique, and it's aimed at introducing some kind of change, either internal or external change. So therefore, we can't assume that the project justifies itself. It's not part of our operations. It's not part of our daily, day-to-day business as usual. So it does need justification. So the way we would do this is you'd start with stakeholder analysis, where you'd actually consult with your stakeholders, and these would be a range of stakeholders involved. As we can see here, the stakeholders in any project, as well as being the project sponsor, the project manager, the project team. You'd also have your project stakeholders who have some kind of impact from the project. So it may be users involved, it may be people within the organization if it's a project aimed at changing the internal environment, it may be neighbors, it may be the government or wider society groups, but these are people who are all impacted or influenced by the project in some way. So That stakeholder analysis would go forward into a decision-making tool we would use typically in a business case to actually justify doing this or executing this project. Now, a business case will always present alternatives to running the project at hand, and we would use the weighted scorecard model typically in order to identify what our priorities are, what kind of outcomes we want to see in order for us to make a selection from the alternatives and then either choose to run the project or not to either. So because projects are temporary and unique, there's always the option of just doing nothing. So in any business case, you'd have a minimum of 2 options, the preferred project and then the do nothing option. And then we'd need to justify our decision to carry on with the project and actually execute the project. So once we have approval from our project sponsor, project board, or whatever governance mechanisms we have in place, would move forward to the project brief itself, which would outline the objectives and the agreed upon requirements for the project. So that allows us to define the project. So now we haven't just arbitrarily defined the project or decided we're going to execute project A or project B. Instead, we've consulted with our stakeholders, we've identified our priorities, we've identified what our critical criteria is, we've developed a business case to justify the project, and then that's gone forward and we've developed a project brief. So the work involved in the first stage, the define stage, is really aimed at developing a strong foundation for the project. We're not just rushing into some work, we're not just rushing to change something in our environment, internal or external. We've actually put the hard work in to make sure it's the right decision and the right project to carry out. So once we are sure of this, we can move forward into the second of the 4 Ds, which is the design stage. So we're still not doing any work on the project itself. We're not, if our project is to build a new website, we haven't done any coding, we haven't started designing the website itself. This is designing the project. So we'd use a variety of tools to actually help us plan the project in the design stage, but we can think about the things that we're actually planning here. So some of it is going to be the actual work involved, so there'll be schedule management involved as well. So what activities need to be done, what tasks need to be done, that would be our work breakdown structure, where we identify the scope of the project and exactly what is involved, what are we going to do in the project and what are we not going to do in the project. That can lead us forward to our network diagram and critical path analysis, where we actually plan out in quite a bit of detail exactly what the scheduling and the work packages in our project are. And that may involve either shortening the project duration or intensifying the project resource usage, but we can play around and use quite a few tools and techniques when it comes to schedule and work package management. We can plan our resources, so whether it's our project team, human resources, whether it's rooming, whether it's materials, whether whatever the resources involved are, that too needs to be designed or planned as well. We need to manage our risks, so we have risk management plans, you have quality management plans, as well as cost estimation, and budgets need to be drawn up as well. All of this will lead into our project plan, so which is going to be a collection of major planning documents. So again, we haven't actually started doing anything on the project yet. The key thing here is we need to make sure everything has been adequately planned for. We've taken into account any risks that we may actually encounter on the project. We've developed a quality management plan. We've developed a network diagram. All of these things need to be done. So again, we're trying to maximize the chances of project success. And we're doing this in the second stage, the design stage, by really working hard on developing our individual plans for the project activities. So once we have all of these plans developed, then we can move on to the third stage of the 4Ds project lifecycle, which will be the deliver stage, often also called the execution phase of the project lifecycle. So here we're actually executing the project. So we're actually going to do the things that we've identified that need to be done in the design phase or the design stage, and we're going to build the building if that's a project, or build the website, or do whatever the actual project needs us to do. So here the project manager, who would be heavily involved in the define stage and the design stage, takes more of a monitoring role. So particularly within Prince 2, an important project management methodology designed for controlled environments, have a concept of management by exception, i.e. everything that needs to be done in the deliver stage has already been significantly and in detail planned in the design stage. So the project manager here is just overseeing and monitoring the execution of the project. So we can use tools, techniques, checklists, risk logs that are monitored and updated, progress management, any exceptions which need to be made. So often we see in Prince 2 things like exception requests being used to change the project if we encountered unforeseen difficulties or delays or challenges. So we can manage by exception, means using things like exception requests and exception approval to make exceptions or changes to our project plan, and that would fundamentally be the role of the project manager during the deliver phase. Now once the deliver phase is complete, then we would move on to the fourth phase, which is the develop phase, also often known as the review phase. And here the project has ended in terms of the actual activities being carried out to achieve the project, but there's still a few things that we need to do in order to wrap up and close the project. So we would want an end project review to look back on the activities during the project, look and see if our initial budget estimation, our cost estimation was correct, if our timeline was correct, our schedule was correct, and how we actually achieved the immediate objectives that we needed to achieve for the project. So we need to say whether the project objectives were a success or not. We also typically see project managers producing a lessons learned report. So anything that we've learned from the project, remember, because projects are not operations, any of the knowledge that we've gained during the execution of this project, we want to capture. It will be useful for future projects, potentially useful for future operations as well. So anything that we've learned, we want to put into a lessons learned report and make sure that's available for future project managers or anyone within the organization that would benefit from this. And lastly, we also have a benefits realization report. Now, the benefits that we're seeking may not be immediately visible once we finish the work involved in the deliver phase, the third phase. So if we take the university library as an example, we may have one of the objectives to build the library itself, but that doesn't mean that the benefits from the library are going to be immediately visible. So the benefits the long-term benefits that the project is seeking to achieve are things like a more productive study environment, greater capacity, so able to accommodate more students, ability to provide a wider range of resources because of increased space. So these things aren't going to be achieved as soon as the library has finished the building part of it. The actual project, they're going to be achieved in the longer term. Maybe after a few semesters we can start seeing if the benefits have actually been realized or not. So oftentimes the develop phase is again monitoring the long-term benefits realization, perhaps 6 months, perhaps a year, perhaps 18 months or 24 months after the end of the execution phase, where we're checking to see if the benefits in the project have actually been realized. Right, so that would be our base kind of 4-stage project lifecycle to give you a sense of how projects would be managed and run from start to finish.